There is a question you're not allowed to ask if the gospel is really lost for 1500 years. For a long time, I accepted the story. The idea that the church started out pure but slowly drifted into error until the truth was buried and finally found again in the Protestant Reformation. During the months I spent outside of the Catholic Church, that narrative felt like solid ground. When I actually looked at the timeline of Christian history, I realized that the story that I was holding on to, it had a massive 1500-year hole in it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I had to ask myself, if the gospel we preach today is the only true one, where was it for the first 1500 years of Christianity? And I'm not talking about it being hidden for a few decades of confusion. I'm talking about 15 centuries where the history books say that the true gospel was functionally absent. Because history doesn't blink. And the answer to that question changes everything. Now let's think about that time, 1500 years. That's longer than the age of modern science, the entire history of the United States, and nearly half of all recorded Christian history combined. And the claim that I was defending at the time was that during that entire timeline, through every martyr, every creed, and every church council, the true gospel was simply missing. And that story sounds fine until you actually open a Christian history book and try to find a single person who believed what you believe. Now, this isn't about Catholics being right yet. It's about being consistent. Because if that lost gospel story is true, we're left between a choice of two options. Option one is that Jesus failed to protect his church. He promised that the gates of hell would never prevail against it, and the Spirit would lead the original believers into all truth. But then he allowed 60 generations of Christians to live and die believing a lie. Then option two is the Reformation didn't recover a lost gospel. It created a brand new interpretation that no one had ever taught or practiced before. Now let's sit with that for a second, because that leads to an issue I think we almost always miss. I started to realize that if I stayed with the first option, I wasn't just disagreeing with the Catholic Church, I was accidentally saying that Christianity did not survive because of God's power. It survived by accident. It survived the Roman Empire and the Middle Ages, while Jesus' own promise was failing, and that bothered me. Even if I didn't like the Catholic Church, the idea that Christ abandoned his bride for 15 centuries, it doesn't sit right. See, the real issue isn't Christian history versus the Bible, it's history versus interpretation. The Bible didn't magically fall from the sky in the year 1500. People were reading it, living it, and dying for it long before Luther and Calvin were even born. So the question we have to answer isn't, did the church make mistakes? Every institution has people who make mistakes. So the real question is this: did Jesus really stay with us? And look, here's the part that nobody likes to talk about. If the gospel was really gone for 1500 years, that's not a small mistake. That's the whole story. It means the gates of hell did prevail and Jesus' promise failed. But if he didn't fail, then maybe the problem isn't Christian history. Maybe it's just the way we're taught to read it. Catholics already have an answer to this, and you don't have to like that answer. But if you're standing on a 1500-year hole, you probably shouldn't ignore it either. I'm going to be in the comments, and I honestly want to know how you handle that timeline. Let's talk about it.